Hi, welcome to BevCam's production of Conversations with the Candidates. I'm Walt Kosmowski, your host for this session, and I'm here with Brett Schetzsle, who is running for Ward 6 City Council. Brett, welcome to the show.
Walt, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Brett, you're the incumbent, and you've had what, one term or two terms on the city council?
I'm just ending my first term, so running for re-election for the first time.
For the first time. So tell me, why are you running for re-election? What prompts you to seek another term?
Well, I think my experience on the council for the first 2 years has been very positive. I've learned a great deal about the city, how the city council works, and the important people within the city government to help try to get things done. I think this is a time of tremendous transition for the city's leadership. We'll have a new mayor, we'll have at least 3 new city councilors, and 6 of the 9 will be in their first or second term. So it's going to demand a certain kind of leadership, and I think that after my first 2 years and the way I've approached the office, that I'll be able to deliver that leadership, and as we continue to try to build a better future for the city of Beverly.
Mm-hmm. So coming off your first term, if you should be re-elected, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing Beverly these days?
Well, I think there are several, and the first one would be streets and sidewalks. We have about a $25 million backlog in streets and sidewalk projects that need to be addressed. We've doubled the amount of money that we have spent on streets and sidewalks out of our city budget, both money from the state and from our own general fund. So we're making progress. That needs to continue. I think when I ran for office in 2011, doubling that budget, which we've done, was one of my goals. And I'm happy that the administration worked with the city council to make that happen. So the streets and sidewalks must continue to be a priority. I think a lot of work on the waterfront needs to be done. If there are, I think if you look back over the last 15 or 20 years, I think if there's one area that has been the most disappointing in terms of a lack of progress, I think it's on the waterfront. So I would encourage the next city council and the next mayor to take a very long, hard look at what opportunities we have there, and not necessarily be boxed in by the things that have been already proposed. Mm-hmm. For Ward 6 specifically, there is a water main project in Beverly Farms that needs to be completed. The water mains underneath Hart Street, Common Lane, and Stanley Street, your neck of the woods, need to be replaced, particularly for the farms, to make sure that we have enough water pressure to fight a sustained fire in that area. And it will also allow us to recondition those 3 streets, which are among the worst in the city of Beverly. In the Centerville area, traffic and safety continues to be important. We get a lot of rapidly moving vehicles on Essex Street, and as we go down Essex Street towards the YMCA and towards Montserrat, there are a lot of traffic issues down there that make that less than safe. And so I hope over the next several months, and then if elected for a second term, we'll be able to take a comprehensive look at that and be able to propose some traffic improvements. And then the final thing in Centerville, I think, is I'd like to work with the city engineer on continuing the discussions with National Grid to bring in natural gas to the Centerville area. It's one of the only areas in the city that doesn't have it, and I think it would be a real benefit for the people in that area, a fuel supply for the winter that is likely cleaner than what they're currently using, and likely more affordable.
Absolutely more affordable.
Those conversations have started with the city engineer and National Grid, and I hope to be a part of that over the next couple of years to see that happen.
Yeah, I know, speaking from personal experience, we looked into bringing in natural gas as an alternative to oil, which, as you know, the price of heating oil has gone through the roof, and it was prohibitively expensive to bring it in the way it's configured. Now. Now, let me ask you a question. Having worked on the city council and been involved in city matters here for the last year, how much time does it take for you to say that you can really devote the amount of time that's necessary to do a city councilor's job?
I would say I spend about 20 hours a week between attending events around the city in the evenings, attending our city council meetings, reading, and the preparation work that goes into being ready for either a full council meeting or a committee meeting. And in my case, there have been several occasions where I have delivered written analysis of my view on policy and steps that we can take forward on a particular issue. The city's financial analyst, which is employed by the council as our independent analyst, told me that I was the first counselor she'd ever seen, prepare such a detailed analysis of a policy question. It happened to be the garbage or the trash fee. So it does take a lot of work, and I would say about 20 hours a week.
You must have been a good student in school, huh?
I did okay.
And you brought the teacher an apple as well, yeah?
Well, maybe not that, but I did okay.
Now, this is a question that we ask all of the candidates in case people sort of don't really know your style. But what is Brett Schetzsle's style? What makes you tick, Brett?
I try to be very logical. I try to be very objective. I think on a body like a city council in a close-knit community like Beverly, there can be a tendency to go along to get along. And I think it's important that there be someone on the council who takes perhaps a less emotional approach to the issues and really tries to analyze, really tries to understand the assumptions that, in our case, the administration has made. Most of the time, those are financial assumptions in order to put forward, whether it be a new bond issuance or a financing plan for a program. So I try to ask a lot of questions. Sometimes those questions are uncomfortable, but I think they needed to be asked. So logical, objective, and I try to be very straightforward with my colleagues, and I think they understand that I'm not somebody who plays games politically, and I'm there to do the job and represent Ward 6 the best I can.
Let's talk about budgeting now and fiscal responsibility. The city council, the budget, the mayor is responsible for putting together what last was about $106 million budget. Having gone through that process, what do you think? What is it necessary for you as a city councilor and for your other colleagues to get through a process like that? What skills do you need? What sort of a mindset do you have to have?
I think a very thorough mindset. I mean, it's a very thick binder that we get for the budget process. The city council, the way the charter is set up here in Beverly, our powers to amend the budget are pretty limited. Right. All we can do is reduce an amount or eliminate it altogether. So, again, it comes back to understanding the assumptions that the administration has made, particularly on the revenue side. The expense side, a lot of those costs stay very similar from year to year. On the cost side, we look to make sure that we're not increasing headcount more than we need to, if at all. When there are large variances from one year to the next, asking the administration why is that, and many times, particularly with this administration, the explanation has been very reasonable, very logical. But on the revenue side, there is a little bit of guesswork involved, and so and the expenditure side, of course, obviously depends on the revenue, and if the revenue is too optimistic, then you can set yourself up for having to make cuts later in the year, which is not always easy. But I will say that it has been pretty easy the last couple of years. We've been in very good shape financially. The mayor and John Dunn, the finance director, have been doing the budgets long enough, and Don Martin, Councilor Martin, the finance and property chairman. It's a pretty well-oiled machine to get through the month of June.
Now, we hear the term bandied about a fiscal responsibility, which plays an important part here. What does that mean to you when you're looking at a budget?
When I think about spending taxpayer dollars, I think about value. I think about being able to demonstrate to taxpayers what they're getting for the money that they pay. And I think that people are far more willing to accept spending, whether it be at the city or the state or even the federal level, if they feel like the money is being used in a way that truly provides better service at basic services that they expect, that their streets and sidewalks are paved and in good condition, and that the general shape of the city, the general look of the city is clean and well maintained. So whenever I look at the budget, whenever I look at spending, I always try to look through it the lens of, as a taxpayer, what am I going to see for this spending? What is the benefit that we are going to deliver to taxpayers if we spend this money? And I think streets and sidewalks is a very tangible way for us to do that. So I'm very much in favor of increasing the amount of money that we spend on streets and sidewalks and continue to do that, even if that means we need to make cuts in other areas that, while are important, might not be as high a priority as chipping away at that $25 million backlog. So it's about value, and it's about tangible return and visual, tangible evidence for the taxpayer that they're getting their money's worth.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. I mean, half the city budget roughly is taken up with the school side. And there's a lot of fixed costs in the total budget. I think it's estimated like something like 80%. A lot of, and what you have to work with, the balance. Where specifically are, to get that value you talked about? Where are the leverage points? Whether it's the income side or the expense side. Tell us where you think those leverage points are.
Well, we've actually been very fortunate on the revenue side. Growth has been stronger than we expected and has been budgeted over the last couple of years. And that has allowed us to not have to make as difficult decisions on the spending side. Headcount, the number of employees is always a place where we want to watch very carefully what we're doing. Beyond that, I think what we spend on areas such as and what we spend on areas such as the schools, for example. I mean, and making sure that we scrutinize that side of the budget as well. And so, again, on the city council side, there are areas. There was one area in particular during the current fiscal year budget, the past fiscal year budget, that I felt very strongly that the mayor had created a reserve account that was going to be spent on things that I didn't think were as high a priority. I voted against that part of the budget. In fact, was for the previous year budget, was the only councilor who voted against any part of the budget because I felt that the spending there wasn't in line with the priorities that we have, and for me, that's spending more money on streets and sidewalks.
Well, let's talk a little bit about development. That's a big topic lately here in Beverly. What is your overall view for the need and the potential for development in Beverly?
Well, we need new growth, because of the way our budgets work, because of Proposition 2.5.
Right.
One of the real levers for the city budget is new growth. How much new growth will we have? We very consistently have budgeted about $800,000 a year in new growth, in new tax dollar growth from new development. It's actually been beyond that the last couple of years. But the reality is that we're running out of space in Beverly to develop. There's really only 3 or 4 areas that would be available for new large-scale development. Obviously, the Brimble Avenue area is one of those. The waterfront is an area for development, but I don't think that that's necessarily large scale. There's some potential opportunity in the Rantoul Street area. That would be more redevelopment than new development. So it's critical that we have that development. And I know that one of the most difficult tasks I think that we face as councilors is balancing the need for development and being able to maintain quality of life.
Right.
And as a city, as I said, I mean we're going to run out of space very soon to be able to have truly new development. And so it's going to get tough in the future to be able to understand where that growth is going to come from.
Now, we're going to touch on all 3 of those areas that you did mention. But in terms of development per se, in evaluating a development project, what do you think are the critical aspects? What should you evaluate as a city councilor to look at evaluating a development project?
Well, I think, does the intended use or does the proposed use fit in the area where the project is being proposed? I think in the case of the Brimble Avenue project, obviously land that has direct access to 128, I think it's very easy to envision some type of commercial development there, and I think that that's why ultimately the council went ahead and moved forward, because that's an area that for a very long time has been designated for that kind of activity. And I think that we will find, and my hope is that we will find, that there's enough buffer between the residential area and where this commercial development is being done. Obviously the amount of tax revenue that the project has the potential to bring and balancing that again against the idea that we want to maintain Beverly as a good quality place to live, and allow people to have their neighborhoods be as intact as possible and as undisturbed as possible. So it's a tough balance, and I think by and large in Beverly we've gotten it right.
Mm-hmm. Now you did bring up the Route 128 Brimble Avenue project, and let's kind of delve into that a little bit more. I want to talk about the specifics, the objective part of that as a development, phase 1 and phase 2, and also the process as it has happened so far and going forward. Certainly, you did mention phase 2, I think was pointed out by someone on the council, has the biggest potential. You were talking about places to develop, and that seems to be, as far as commercial development, the biggest pocket that's currently available. Tell us a little bit more about it. Tell us about phase 1, why you voted and why most of the councilors voted to accept that part of it.
Yeah, I think phase 1 for me was really about the traffic and safety improvements that will come from moving the connector road. And after the state and the engineers spending nearly 10 years looking at different configurations, looking at different ways to be able to improve that situation, this is what has been proposed, has been vetted at the state level. They seem to be encouraged by the design, and it's a design that will potentially enable phase 2, although the two are not necessarily connected. We could very easily stop now after phase 1 and never get to phase 2 if we think that it would be too much for that area to handle. Now, I think the way that phase 2 will be configured, and where cars will have direct access to those properties and not ever have to get on Brimble Avenue.
Sure.
I think that will be relatively lower impact. So, for phase 1 for me was about the ability to really have the state fund what I think are necessary traffic and safety improvements. I think the piece of land that was currently owned by the developer in that area, I don't think he was bluffing when he said that he was going to develop it, whether the land swap occurred or not. And so I think that the practical reality of the vote was that we have there was going to be development on that piece of property, with or without the traffic improvements, and I think with puts us in a far better position.
Now, as far as phase 2, I know that it may be premature to talk about specifics, but some of the numbers in terms of the revenue, increased revenue base and new growth to the city, and the number of jobs and so forth. What are some of those figures? What is your feeling on what that can do for the city if that phase 2 gets fully implemented?
Well, I think it's difficult to put an exact number on the jobs that will come along with that. I think a lot of it will depend on what the economy looks like at the time, what we're able to do in terms of facilitating and what type of buildings a developer would propose in that area. But I think that there's a pretty standard formula which I think the mayor and the administration used to develop the initial job number, which I think was 7,500 jobs. Right. That's based on jobs per acre and development and things of that nature, and the type of zoning that's there. So I certainly think it's not an insignificant number of jobs. I think we'll truly have to reevaluate how many jobs when we get to that point. But certainly the annual tax revenue potential could be as much as $8 million a year. And for that's nearly a nearly a 10% increase over the revenue that we have now. So certainly nothing to balk at, and I think that as the time comes and as phase 1 is put in place, we'll have a better sense of what phase 2 needs to look like, again, to balance that need for growth and possible economic development and jobs that come along with it, to being respectful of the people who live in that area and trying again to strike that balance. Now
that brings me to the second part of the question. We talked about kind of the specifics, the objective realities of development, but let's talk a little bit about process. And there a lot of residents have spoken up, and the city council made a vote. What have you learned now? What kind of learnings can you take away from that going forward and looking at this, finishing up phase 1 and getting into phase 2? What kind of learnings can you take away from that as a city councilor?
I'm hopeful that the next administration involves the city council earlier in the process, the city council as well as the residents. I think, as the current administration has, gained tenure in their positions, they have gotten a lot of leeway in terms of, being able to develop things, I wouldn't necessarily say behind the scenes, but they've been able to put together and develop very well-rounded plans before they get to the city council. Every administration will do things a little bit differently, but I hope that the next one will involve both the city council and the residents a little bit earlier in some of that planning process. The process for the Brimble Avenue project, that project has been very widely reported for a very long time. It was something that we talked about during the 2011 campaign. I think the residents in that area perhaps didn't get switched onto it until the very end. But the drawings for the proposed connector road changes, those things had all been published in the Salem News and the Beverly Citizen, and so there's certainly, in my opinion, there was no lack of conversation about what was happening there. I think the land swap part of it came a little bit later in the process, and I think that that's really what I think sparked the most interest, because it did call for the zoning change by the city council. If that land swap didn't need to occur, obviously the zoning change wouldn't have been needed, and really we wouldn't have been, have been involved in that phase. But the process will continue. I mean, all we've done is set the parameters for what can be proposed in that area, either by right or by special permit. One of the things that I've done is I've filed an amendment to prevent drive-through restaurants from being in that area. And it's just one fewer thing that would bring sort of transient traffic into the area, and while it may make a small impact, I think it is worth pursuing. But the planning board will now be involved. Councilor Don Martin has filed in order to create a Brimble Avenue Citizens Committee that will be able to, I think, be a lot more involved in the process moving forward. But the process is far from over. I mean, the state still has to go through its design reviews, the public meetings for that, for the connector road. So we just sort of set the stage with the zoning change vote, and then we'll proceed from here.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, Brett. Let me ask you this. We're going to touch upon a few development projects here. I'd like to get your comment on these. The McKay School's been sitting dormant for a number of years. Can we put that on the fast track for something, or what's your opinion? What should we do with that?
Well, the mayor has long said, said that he thinks the best route is to sell the property. With the economy being the way that it has the last several years, and the bids that have been received for that property have been less than we hoped for. At some point, though, I think we do need to cut bait and move forward with something, and if it's not as much as we'd like, that may just be the economic reality at the time. There has been talk of potentially looking at that and being redeveloped as a public safety building, a new home for the police, and potentially fire leadership, but certainly the police. With buildings that age, you never quite know what you're going to get into on the inside. So I think it's something that the next administration and the next council could possibly revisit. I know there was a feasibility study done at one point, and that. Knowing that we need a new public safety facility, that may be one route to get there, as opposed to building it near the Cummings Center, or on the Cummings Center property.
Right.
But at some point, I think we just have to move forward. We either have to sell the property or we have to redevelop it, and I think our best route is ultimately going to be selling it. But I think we're open to ideas.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was going to ask you, the next point I was going to ask you about is a public safety police, a new police station, or maybe a combined police fire station, and what your thoughts were on that. Now, you mentioned one possibility of the Cummings. Now, does the city own is it a city-owned property that's surrounded by Cummings property, or how does that?
Yeah, so we have an option on a piece of land there that would be deeded to the city if we choose to build a public safety facility there, and I believe that was part of the the original deal when the Cummings Center was redeveloped. I think it's an option. I think we have several priorities. and the public safety facility is certainly one of them.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that would be on the drawing board, a front burner item, let's say in the next couple of years, or do you think that we're looking a little bit beyond that?
I think that happens after the middle school. So I think right now the target date for the middle school is 2017.
Yeah.
And so I think we'd have a hard time being able to do that before then.
And you brought up the middle school. Let's talk about that. Now, it looks like the state has approved from their small building administration, whatever that department is called. They've approved that, and that would surplus the Briscoe High School or the Briscoe Middle School. Now, what's your vision for what might be done with the Briscoe School?
Again, with buildings that old, you never quite know what you're going to get. I mean, my feeling on Briscoe is probably that some of the potential asbestos issues and just the overall condition of that building might make it very difficult for someone to redevelop into condos or apartments, as been done in several other schools in the city. So, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I know which way that would go, whether it would be developed or within the current facade, or whether it would be torn down and something else built there. I mean, certainly, there are housing needs that we have here in Beverly. So if that were to be turned into a small residential area, or that, I think that would be good. I think that would be good for the city.
Now, there's been a talk. Now let's turn to the waterfront, and there's been a lot of talk about a new Black Cow restaurant, et cetera, and we got things in court and litigation. Does one restaurant a waterfront development make? What's your feeling on what we need to do to make that a vibrant waterfront?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that one of the things that has hindered us in moving forward down there is that Beverly, that area has been designated as a specific port area by the state. So there are about 13 what they call DPAs around the state. Beverly, Salem, Gloucester, East Boston, that area, Fall River, New Bedford. And that really restricts the type of development. The areas are designed to be protected for water-dependent industrial uses. It's a fairly broad definition that they use for that, but that is what has really been at the center of the disagreement between the Beverly Port Marina owners and the city in the development of the Black Cow. Early in 2012, I presented to my colleagues, a very thorough examination of the DPA, its implications for the city, and made a very strong case to petition the state to remove the designation. Because there's 17 acres in the DPA on the waterfront. Nearly half of those are taken up by the Tux Point condos. So when you look at the industrial uses that the DPA is intended for, it's simply not feasible to think that those things are going to be located within that area next to a residential area, and then right in front of the folks that live off of Water Street. So and actually by sort of ironically, where the commercial fishing dock is in Beverly sits outside of the DPA. So having the DPA removed would allow us to control the destiny of what happens down there, and would present some I think some redevelopment opportunities along the waterfront. But there has been discussion about that even in the last campaign in 2011. As I said, I wanted to move forward with it on the city council. I deferred to the administration because of the ongoing litigation. But I think we've reached a point where the approach that's been taken for the last several years and just waiting for the courts to figure it out has not been nearly proactive enough, and I think we're missing a big opportunity down there.
Well, we're running short on time, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you one final question. Sure. If our viewers out there said, Brett Schetzsle, why should I vote for you? Why should I entrust the management of the city of Beverly to you? What would you say to them? And I'll give you the opportunity to take the last bit of the show here, and you can talk right into the camera and address our viewers and the voters, and take it from there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Walt. For the last 2 years, I've had the honor to represent Ward 6 on Beverly City Council. Having lived on both the Beverly Farms Pride's Crossing side as well as the Centerville side, I feel like I'm very well positioned to be able to meet the needs and understand the needs of both sides of the ward, because they're very distinct and different. I ran for office because I care very much about the future of Beverly. My wife and I moved here. We chose Beverly, and this is where we're going to raise our family. My young children will begin Centerville Elementary School within the next couple of years, and so it's very important to me that we continue with the path that we're on to making Beverly a great place to live. As I mentioned earlier in the show, there's going to be a need for significant leadership on the City Council during the next 2 years, with at least 3 new City Councilors and 6 of the 9 being in their first or second term, working together with a new mayor. I think I'm ready to provide the kind of leadership that will put the City Council in a stronger position to be more proactive in the issues that we address and no longer just wait for the administration. When you think about who to vote for in Ward 6, there are 2 approaches. You can vote for someone who's looking at the future of Beverly, or you can vote for someone whose reason for running and inspiration is rooted in the past. Mine is inspired by the future, and I think when you look at the 2 candidates that you'll have to vote for on November 5th, that it'll be important for you to have an independent voice on the City Council from outside of the city's establishment who will represent your interests first and make sure that we do things in a transparent manner at City Hall and that you get the value for your tax dollars that you deserve. So I'm asking for your vote on November 5th as Ward 6 City Councilor. Yep. Thank you.
Brett, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Walt.
And I'd like to remind our viewers that you have been watching Conversations with the Candidates. I'm your host for this episode, Walt Kosmowski, and we have been speaking with Brett Schetzsle, who is Ward 6 City Council candidate. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.